I was associating like time management with like sleep. How I went about my day was I did it to ensure that I got enough sleep. And so essentially, like, if I didn't get enough sleep before practice, I would already wake up like feeling defeated. Chanting would just like raise my life condition. My capacity was kind of like expanding wider and wider. So even if I was nervous or even if I felt like I wasn't like completely prepared for something, I would just feel like some kind of like confidence to just be able to do everything. I think I'm just gonna like go back to sleep and like just say that like I overslept or something. But then I also remember like in that moment I'm like, no, like I can't lose to myself.
From SGI USA, I'm Cassidy Bradford, and this is Buddhability, the weekly series where I talk with Buddhists from all walks of life about the power we each have to change our lives and the world around us. Welcome, Ayu, to Buddhability. Thank you so much for joining from LA in your brand new apartment. Congratulations. We'll get started with just you giving an intro so you can share your name, your age, and I know you recently graduated from college, so just share, a little bit of background.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Ayu. I'm 22 years old. And I just graduated I just got my bachelor's degree. Yay! Super excited. And now I'm originally from Hawaii. I'm born and raised in Honolulu. And then for college, I moved to Southern California. So that's where I've been for the last 4 years. And I just got a job. So now I'm going to be working in LA for at least 2 years. So I'm super duper excited about that.
You're like in a brand new chapter, so this is a very exciting time to get you and to interview you. So I'd love to hear like just a little bit about your life growing up, and I know that you grew up in a household with Buddhism, so if you can tell me just like a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, well, my parents are basically born into practicing Buddhism, and so I also have 3 other brothers, so we all grew up just kind of watching our parents go to meetings and chanting in the morning and evening, so we would also kind of follow suit. And my 2 brothers were really involved in like different activities too. We would have like district meetings, which is our like local meetings for members in like our like close proximity, like in our neighborhood. And then we would also have like this thing called youth band. So it was any like young Buddhists that play instruments. So they would always go, and they're about 6 and 7 years older than me. So I thought they were like so cool, and I wanted to play in the band too. So once I picked up the French horn, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna join the youth band. And I thought it was so fun. At some point, all 4 of us, like my younger brother too, we were all in like the youth band playing together. And I think in that experience, it was just fun, like making new friends outside of school. Like I thought it was really cool to like know people. But I think over time too, while we were in it, like in the band, we would always say like, yeah, how are we going to encourage like members that are coming to meetings? Like this is how we're going to like empower everyone and feel like the energy. And so it's kind of like also I realized like, wow, we really see like depth in whatever we do growing up in my Buddhist community. So that was something that kind of always like brought me back. I really enjoyed feeling that like that sense of purpose and being driven. And yeah, and then over time I developed my practice on my own too.
It's amazing. I'm just thinking like, yeah, as a young person to kind of be told that you also have the power to like encourage people with your life. You know, I was just talking to somebody else about this recently that, you know, oftentimes, especially as you get older, like you see young people as like, oh, you're inexperienced, you're this, you're that, kind of diminishing the power of young people's lives. And I think something that's really incredible about this Buddhist community is that we don't believe that. You know, we believe that young people have just as much power and capacity, and I think growing up in an environment like that is really pretty exceptional. I'm sure there are other communities and spaces like that, but yeah, definitely for me too, like growing up in that environment was really, really incredible. So was there like a certain point in your life that I'll say maybe like your relationship to Buddhism like deepened a little bit and you started thinking about it more as like, oh, this is like really my own kind of life practice and philosophy? Or was it something like gradual over time, or you always felt that way?
I think I always really felt like I never not wanted to practice with
Wow,
like
yeah.
with the SGI, with the Buddhist community, because I just felt so warm, like it was so warm and so welcome. And I knew how much it also like meant to my parents. So I think even more so I was like, okay, like I don't really get it now, but like something is like working for them. Like I see it through their like lives, and like how even though like my parents were struggling a lot too growing up, like they still had like just like this kind of like confidence that would just never waver, that I really respected. So I think it was probably maybe around like middle school time was when, you know, middle school, you're struggling with your like self-esteem, and I struggle a lot with like my own body image too. And then a lot of my friends were really like struggling around me too with very similar things, or like with friendships. And so that's when it was kind of like, well, I knew that if I chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo like how my parents did, then like, I don't know, something's gonna happen. So it's just kind of like, okay, let me like test this out, let me try it. And like, of course I would feel in that moment, like after I would like finish like gongyo, which is like reciting like the portions like of the Lotus Sutra, and then also like chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, there was just kind of be this like sense of like calm, or just like determination that would come out of like everything that I was feeling. And then going to school the next day with that kind of feeling was just always like so reassuring, because a lot of the times there would be times when I would wake up and like I would just be thinking about like my body image, or like the way how much I weighed, or like and so like chanting in the morning was something to just basically reset everything that I was like feeling in that moment, and kind of like push it out of the limelight and just think about, okay, how do I want to be happy today, was kind of like, that's when I kind of started like feeling like, oh, this is kind of the benefit of like doing my practice. Over time, like I would also like share some like Buddhism with like my friends too, and they would really enjoy it, or they would think it was strange. But I think also the practice of just like sharing that with others and kind of like owning that is also when I felt like, oh, this is like my own practice too, and something that I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, some days I mean, even now, like wake up with like whatever on my mind, or like I'm like stressed out about something. I had a horrible stress dream. I have lots of stress dreams. But like when I can then go and chant in the morning, you're right, it is kind of like, okay, my focus was like all on these worries, and now I'm like, you know, yanking them, pulling them slowly back to like, okay, wait a second, you know, let me really like recenter myself. And I feel like really incredible that you were able to experience that at such a young age, and create that kind of rhythm for your life. And, you know, you mentioned like body image and self-esteem, and today we're going to be talking a lot about like self-esteem, and also like its connection, interestingly, with time management. And I think maybe anybody that struggles with the two definitely sees the connection. So definitely, like, we're going to talk mostly about college, but if there's other points in your life that you want to pull into, we can totally do that. You know, I know starting college is already just like a huge life adjustment, and it's a lot of work. But you were also somebody that like took on a lot of extra things during college. So maybe I'm curious, like, were you always somebody that was like, I'm going to fill up all of my time with stuff?
I don't know, like, I've always been really bad with managing my time, so that's why I always felt like, I didn't really I don't think I took on too many responsibilities, like, in middle school or high school. Like, I would always hear, like, some people, you know, they were, like, doing some crazy things, like doing these projects, starting up a club, and like I think I also compared myself a lot to those people, because I was always like, oh my god, like I'm not doing enough, like all these people are gonna like go into like super good colleges because they have so much on their resume. But I think that was something that like I struggled with, like I've always felt like I wasn't like doing enough. But I mean, still, like, even though I felt that way, it didn't necessarily lead to, like, me wanting to take on more responsibilities. It just kind of, like, made me, like, doom scroll on, like, Instagram and, like, TikTok, and then feel even worse about myself. But, yeah, so there was definitely a shift when I got to college.
It's interesting, though, that like, thread of comparison around, like, achievement was always kind of there, you know, because I feel like, I don't want to speak for other people, but for myself, you know, there's always these kind of threads of like, you know, different tendencies of my life, and they show up in different ways as I like my environment changes, my life changes. Yeah. So like what changed in college?
I think in college, I went to a pretty small liberal arts school, so you get to know a lot more people a lot better. And then you also kind of see, like, I feel like I got really inspired by the people that I was around too, because I also like dormed the entire time, so we were all very close, and that like experience of like everyone everyone was like had like this sense of like purpose in everything that they were doing too. So I realized it's like, oh, I was like kind of looking at like taking on things with like this sense of like one like obligation, but also like take the amount of things that you were doing is also like your worth basically, and kind of like defining yourself on it. But then how the people around me that I was really close to and admired a lot, like they were doing it out of like a sense of like, oh, because like it's like what I'm doing, you know? They were doing it because like they like felt purpose or like a sense of mission. And then I was like, that is so much cooler than like what I've been thinking the entire time. So I was like, let me try to be like that. Like I want to like be someone that like whatever, like does a lot, doesn't do a lot, whatever. Like whatever I do, like I want to feel that like sense of like mission or like sense of purpose in it. Because, and then over time when I, you know, like over time when I'm like growing and like learning how to like become someone with like driven with that sense of purpose, I realized that all the noise and all the worries that you had is really just like casted in the back, because now you're just so focused on like what is your purpose in this moment or in this activity, or like, or if you're like in a leadership role, like not worrying so much about like all the logistical things that you have to work around, or your anxieties about like whether you're doing it correctly. It's just really focused on like, what do I have to do in this moment, and fulfilling that.
Absolutely. I think that aspect of like feeling a sense of purpose with what you're doing is so key. And like so many people that I talk to for the show talk about that, like really understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Then it makes like all of the noise, like even if it's still there or it might sway you, like it's sort of the light to like pull you out, so to speak. Like, okay, wait, yes, I know exactly like why I care about this, why I'm doing this. In your second year in particular, I know you started to like really start taking on more responsibilities. So can you walk me through that year and like what happened?
I was on the student government. We had like a 5-member team of student government. It was a lot of like pressure, because I was like, I'm like, what, 19 years old? And that's like, I'm a second year too. So it's all these people that are like older than me and like more experienced than me. So again, like I was like really comparing myself with like a lot of other people, which I feel like it's natural too. And in a way that's like kind of what drove me to like really grow and like be on top of it. But yeah, that was like a role that like really tested like my time management, one, but also like gave me a lot of like responsibilities that like I didn't even know that I could do, or like lacked the faith in myself that I could do. But I remember what drove me to take on that role was, one, because like I knew it would test like my own confidence in myself, but also because like I just really enjoyed like being in my like school community, that I was like, I can't just like leave, I can't just stop at that, like, oh, I enjoy it, like I have to turn that into something. And I think that's what led me to take on that kind of like responsibility in the first place. But yeah, I remember like there would just be like meetings, like we would have meetings with our team every day, and then sometimes it would go over for like 2 hours, and then I'm like, what are we doing? Like, I was like, I did not sign up for this. Because it's like not just like meetings with your team too, like discussions with your team. You're like discussing with like other like staff on campus, or like other like student groups that like are like that need to know what to do. And then you basically have to like give like some direction. And I'm like, I don't know how to create that kind of vision. So So yeah, and then on top of that, like of course, like second year or sophomore is like sophomore year, so you're taking on like upper level classes, and I went to a liberal arts college, so oh god, so many readings, like so many like professors wanted to torture us, and then we would have like essays on top of that too. Don't even get me started on my writing. Like I'm someone that will like wait till the last minute to write everything, and I would just like I wrote a 20-page paper in one 12-hour span one time because I just kept procrastinating it over and over because of that feeling. Like I'm like a very perfectionist in my writing. So that's kind of like, that's something that like I've battled. But you can now imagine like if I like struggling in that and then also doing this role. And then of course like there's also like I was in like a dance club too. And I was like a officer for the dance club. Mind you, I've never danced K-pop before college. So now I was in charge of teaching the dances.
You're like, I don't even really know these dances, honestly.
No, I don't. I really don't. Yeah, so it's honestly so funny because it's like if you think about it, like everything like logically, like nothing should have gone well. Logically, nothing would have gone well, at least in my mind. Yeah. But like managing all of that, and I'm like terrible with like scheduling things and time management. So that honestly was like a point where I started feeling like even more self-conscious about myself, right? Because I'm like, oh my god, people are gonna like see the true me, like how messy I am, or like how I don't really know what I'm doing or like what's going on. But yeah, there were like many times where I would like, you know, call my mom and tell her like, oh my god, like I don't know how any of this is gonna happen. Like we have an event on this day, and then we also have an event on this day, and like nothing's going to plan. And then on top of that, I have like this paper to do, and then she would just always tell me like, just do your best. And I'm like, what do you mean, just do my best?
Like, my best isn't enough, Mom.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I always felt. But that's when I really started like really chanting, because I'm like, I have no idea what else to do, because like even, you know, it's like chanting takes up your time in your day. Yeah. So I would always wonder like, how am I supposed to make time for chanting? Like, how am I supposed to chant in the morning? Like, I'm oversleeping everything. How am I supposed to chant at night? I'm still working on my essay. But what I realized was like when I would chant, it was just kind of like, when you're chanting, it's kind of like, one, you're like affirming your life. You're deeply like affirming like the infinite potential of your life. I was always encouraged by like my friends and like in like the Buddhist community. If you're struggling with time management, then you can chant about that. And I'm like, what does that even mean? But I think through that process, I think like I realized that like there's this concept, everything is life condition, like kind of the state of your life. We all have different types of life condition. Like some things like might stress us out really easily. And sometimes like we won't be stressed out at all by like things that like go completely wrong. So how you react to that is really dependent on like your state of life or your life condition. And so when I would chant, I would feel like I'm like elevating my life condition. And I was like, there's no other choice that I have because like something needs to give. So like, yeah, chanting would just like raise my life condition. My capacity was kind of like expanding wider and wider. So even if I was nervous, or even if I felt like I wasn't like completely prepared for something, I would just feel like some kind of like confidence to just be able to do everything.
I'm wondering like if you can walk me through sort of like the internal process of like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and chant about time management, you know, because I think a lot of people ask like, what do you think about when you're chanting? Or if some, like to your point, somebody tells you to chant about time management and you go, well, I don't even know what that means, like how do I chant about it? So doesn't have to be like, oh, in one specific time, but maybe like over the course of however long, like what did it look like to be chanting about time management?
That's a great question. I think it really I didn't necessarily like go and chant like I'm gonna manage my time better per se, but it was because usually the thing that's at the forefront of my mind is like how worried I am about like something that I have to do, whether that was like an essay or like some kind of event that like our team was like hosting. Or so I would just kind of like go to like my like altar and just like chat and be like, oh, I feel all of these nerves, and just kind of like openly just be honest with like everything that I was feeling. Like, oh, I was also like I was nervous that people won't enjoy this event, or like I'm nervous that like my essay is going to like be really bad, or like I'm nervous that I'm gonna pull on all-nighter again because I don't feel confident in my writing, or like confident in like whatever work that I'm doing. So I'd honestly kind of go in with that and just be like, this is like how I feel. Like while I'm chatting too, I would always kind of like take breaks and just kind of like seek like guidance, or like seek kind of like some kind of like Buddhist material to basically like reframe all of these worries, or understand why are all of these worries happening, and also why do they keep reoccurring, because it's like it's a process that it didn't stop in just sophomore year. It would also continue throughout college too, but I think it would kind of help me reframe all the worries that I had. And also I remember there was this one time where I was feeling again like really, really overwhelmed about within like the student government role. I was like worried about how all the students will react, or if everyone will be happy, or if like whatever we're doing will like upset them. And I think like I just felt like so much pressure and so much worry. But then I remember, I think I was like talking with like a leader in like my Buddhist community too, and she was also saying like, oh, I've also been feeling really similar. And then she was kind of like sharing her experiences, and I really resonated with everything, because it's like when you're in a position of leadership, you're responsible for so many people. So that's like even more pressure of like kind of like I feel like, oh, you have to be perfect because everyone's watching. But she was saying that like all that like feelings of being like overwhelmed and like feeling that kind of pressure, she like was chatting about it, and then she realized like, wow, it took me this much like anxiety to really feel like the depth of my life, and like to feel the sense of like to really understand this like sense of responsibility that I have. And it's not like it's not that. And she also said in a different way, it's like this like the depth of my mission. Like your life mission, because you're feeling like this kind of anxiety, not because you're not good enough, but it's because so many people are like counting on you. How like amazing is that, basically? And I'm like, that's so true. Like I kind of saw it as like, I'm very fortunate to like be dependent on like this, but also like in the future, it's going to just grow even more. That like your responsibilities are going to grow even more. So actually this is very small, not in like a you should be scared way, but in like a look at like how like wonderful your life is, and like how amazing you are as like a person. After I heard that from her, I felt really encouraged, because now I was feeling like, wow, I'm going to be someone that like people can count on and people can look up to. Right now, I don't necessarily feel like that because I'm so worried, but it's because of these worries that I can transform it into growth and become that kind of person. So I was really, really encouraged by that. As I would chant, I would also chant to like have that kind of like confidence to become like a person like that and really believe in myself.
I mean, to your point, it's not like, okay, I sit down one time and chant, now everything changes. But there are so many moments of like shifting your perspective slightly, and then you study something, and then you speak to someone, and like at least I find for myself there are many kind of like light bulb moments, so to speak, but that can kind of like, oh wow, okay, I really sort of like something unlocked in my brain now, and I totally get this, like, okay, now I can keep going.
I like that you mentioned about like little moments, because I think like your little like when we do our human revolution, that act of like transforming like our life, basically it comes in like such small little moments, and it's like so powerful, because I remember like I think kind of going back to, there was this one time like in second year when I was also like I had to go to like a student board meeting. And I was like, oh my god, like I'm so underprepared for this, like I didn't make enough time to prepare for this, like why do I never make enough time to prepare for things? And like there would be many times where I would just kind of like oversleep things, because I just felt like so paralyzed with like not being prepared for something and being judged for not being prepared for something. And so there was a time where like I would also like, I remember I like looked at my clock, and then I was like, shoot, like I'm already like late to this meeting, like I think I'm just gonna like go back to sleep and like just say that like I overslept or something. And I remember like feeling like I'm gonna make that excuse, but then I also remember like in that moment I'm like, no, like I can't lose to myself, I can't lose to like I can't lose to myself. And so I remember like getting up and like deciding that like I did chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo 3 times before I left. I remember thinking like, I feel so underprepared right now, but I'm just gonna do my best. Like how my mom would always tell me, I'm just gonna do my best, and I'm just gonna show up, because that's the only thing that I can do. And so I'm going to do the only thing that I can do. And I remember showing up to that meeting. It honestly ended up being like so chill. Like, I don't think people even noticed that I like walked in late, but I was like so worried about how people would perceive me, right? Yeah. But I realized in that moment, people didn't really care. And it's not necessarily like I felt better because people didn't notice, but like I felt so much better because I decided that like no matter what happens, I'm going to take charge of myself. And just that small moment was like such a big like victory, and it opened, and like doing that consistent, or like trying to do my best to like win in all of those small moments really built up that sense of like just like inner confidence too.
Yes. I heard from, somebody else in the Buddhist community that was saying like, every time you have those kind of moments where, there's like the enlightened version of you, and then there's like the not enlightened version, deluded version that's like, no, like you're not good enough, you should just sleep in, everybody's gonna judge you. When you make the decision to like listen to your enlightened self and like make that decision, then you're basically like developing a habit of winning over yourself, winning over your negativity, winning over, your inner critic. And it's like working out, right? Like as you build that muscle, it's still hard, but it's easier because oh wait, I've done this before. Like I've done this before. It was okay. And like I felt great afterward because I really stood up to that like inner critic and said, no, I'm going to do this anyway. I'm just going to do my best, and that's enough. So I definitely I resonate with that, because I feel like sometimes we can think that, like we have to have these like giant pivotal moments, and of course we all have very pivotal moments in our lives, but I think it can be easy to devalue those like small moments, because there are so many of them just throughout the day. Like when my alarm goes off, do I get up so that I have more time to chant, or do I snooze? That decision in and of itself is huge. And like the more and more that I make the decision to like pull myself out of bed, the easier and easier it becomes. I loved what you were sharing about like the sort of the depth of your life and being able to really experience that through like feeling all of this like anxiety and sort of suffering in a sense, like, wow, this feels so intense and so heavy, but that also means like, wow, my life is so deep. And I feel like the degree to which I've like really struggled with things also is like the degree to which I feel like I'm capable now. And like I needed to have that sort of depth of struggle so that now I could be a person that it has that same depth of like strength and courage and compassion. So at the time, like, your second year, maybe into your third, like in general, what did your Buddhist practice look like?
Yeah, I think throughout that second year experience of like juggling everything, I realized what really like centered like my Buddhist practice, because I was like, okay, this needs to be the root. Everything else will be fine, but as long as this is the foundation, like I'm so good. But I think in third year, I also like went on study abroad during that time. So that was a fun experience because I felt like I didn't have like the Buddhist community that I had in the US. Like, so I remember like feeling like lost, and just feeling, I was like, oh, I miss everyone, and like feeling like that power, like feeling like that energy. But I think that was also like a very important experience, because that's when it kind of now even more so had to be like an independent faith. Like, of course, like still practicing with like the people that I knew, but like I really needed to like solidify like my faith on my own, and like not really depend so much on like other people chanting around me, but like now like taking that own initiative to like chant on my own even more. But I think even like during study abroad, it was interesting, because like second year was like so busy and so full of just like small victories, big victories, and like through also like my faith and my practice, that I I was on a high. Like, I was just like soaring. I was like, I'm chilling. I'm like, wow, I have this practice. Like, things are gonna go so great. Like, I'm so great. But then when I'm on study abroad, the pace is so much like chiller. And then I also like, I was like comparing myself. So I didn't realize this. Actually, this was really interesting. I didn't realize like how much I was comparing myself to other people and their like ability to like speak. Oh, sorry, I was in Japan, but like everybody was speaking Japanese so much better than me, and like everyone's speaking Japanese, and then I'm like Japanese American, so I look Japanese, so people are talking to me and I'm like, no, but I can't speak the language, and I felt like so much shame. And I think even during that time, I actually became like really like, I felt really cut off from people and like not connected with anyone. Yeah. And yeah, I was like, I really struggled during that study abroad experience. And I think I saw so many, like, technically I'm like an exchange student, so I see all these other students that are in these like roles, like taking on responsibility, doing so much, and like challenging themselves. And I always like, I felt bad about myself because I'm like, oh, I'm not challenging myself. Like, I'm not challenging myself enough. Like, I was like, what happened to that Ayu that was like really challenging herself in everything, like in every moment? Like, I was like, where did she go? I was like, is that not me anymore? And I started feeling like even more so like identity crisis and like just like worried about myself. And it's interesting because it also like carried over into like that spring semester when I came back to college. I'm like back in like my land. I'm excited. I'm like, this is where I was really challenging myself. Finally, I can feel that like energy again and like basically feel better about myself. But actually, like, I was like, instead, like, I saw all these other people that were like, you know, either doing like their like class senate roles, different student government roles, and I'm not in that position, and that's like totally fine. But I was also like, wow, I'm not doing anything. Like, these people are doing so much more, and they're like doing so much better, or like growing so much. I'm like, what am I doing? So I remember like every time it would just always be like, oh, this person's doing this. What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. I struggled like with like my own self-esteem. But I guess I also realized in that moment, I think, while I was like reflecting over the summer and deciding like, what am I going to do in like my senior year, like this is my last year, I realized like, wow, I was really defining my worth based on the things that I'm doing, like the activities that I'm doing. Like, it sounds good, like that spirit to challenge yourself and to grow is like so amazing. But then what I realized too is that it could also like function as something bad for me, where I'm like defining myself based on like what I'm doing and how much I'm doing. And then also, in a sense, I'm also judging other people for not challenging themselves. And it's
I feel called out because I struggled with that too, especially in college.
Yeah, like I was like, oh my god, I've become someone that judges other people for like based on what I think, like how much they're challenging themselves. And then also at the same time, I'm basing like how I enjoy my life or how I live my life based on whether I think I'm challenging myself or not.
Well, you know, something that I also really struggled with that, and I think a lot of people, especially young people, there's like this, like tying self-worth to achievement. And I think, of course, like, you know, when you're in high school, you're trying to like rack up all of these things so that you can get into the good college. And then in college, you're trying to, you know, build your resume, and, you know, it becomes this sort of like my self-worth is, you know, equates with all of the accomplishments that I have or the things that I've done, or this idea of challenging yourself. But something that I've learned more recently and like past several years is that like what it looks like to be challenging yourself can look really different. You know, like sometimes, like when I've experienced depression, like my capacity to do things is so low. So like the effort that it takes just to like do one small thing, that is challenging myself, maybe even more than like when I'm feeling great and I'm just doing all of this stuff. So I think like with time, I've really been able to like challenge myself to see like what's really in my heart, and like in my heart am I challenging myself. But I think it's very, for those of us that are just have this inner critic, it's so easy to turn like anything as like, oh, you're not doing that enough, like this wonderful spirit of like, I'm not challenging myself enough, I need to do that more, is so different than like, shame on you, you're not challenging yourself, you know. So how did you like shift that, or how did you face that voice telling you like you're not challenging yourself enough?
It just like shifted my mind when I was also like seeking from like one of like my like a friend in like my Buddhist community. She was saying something along the lines of like that spirit to like want to challenge yourself, like everything about ourselves. We have these like, you know, we have these different desires, like we have these different aspects of ourselves. And as you said, like everything can function in like a diluted way or like an enlightened way. So when she said like, oh, your spirit to want to challenge yourself is great because then you're always growing, like that's the enlightened way. But actually it can also, it has a diluted aspect to it. So I realized, yeah, like, wow, I want to become more compassionate toward myself and towards other people. And basically, like, whenever I chant, I always imagine, like, how can I take all of the aspects of myself, whether I think it's good or bad, and like let it shine in like the most enlightened way and function towards like the happiness of myself and towards other people. That was kind of a shift.
I mean, I think like, yeah, maybe my question about senior year is like, of course, like we've been saying, it doesn't just like disappear, right? But how did you like continue to kind of grow in terms of both time management and like really, yeah, navigating this inner critic, both critical of yourself and of others?
I guess in my, I don't know if this was necessarily tied with like self-esteem per se, but I just remember after having that shift in understanding like why I was experiencing everything in like my third year, I realized I actually felt like, I don't know, I felt like bright. I felt like so much happier again. I was like, wow, like not judging myself or also like comparing myself to other people or like not doing quote unquote like not being as busy, basically, like relieving myself of all of that like suffering that I was putting myself under. I think I felt even like more excited and like sincerely felt like, oh, I want to do something again and like you know, just get back to like doing something that like made me feel uncomfortable or like challenging myself, but not in like a defining my self-worth, but in like a sincere way. I was like, oh, I'm gonna join the cross-country team. Like a friend was like, oh, why don't you join the cross-country
oh my
team?
gosh, that's a challenge.
I was like, that's so random, right? But I remember thinking, because I'm like terrible with like waking up in the morning, really bad at waking up in the morning. And I always want to become someone that can like win in the morning and like chant in the morning. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do about that? I'm going to join the cross country team. So the practices were like from 6:15 a.m. And oh my God, like, wow, that was a big battle. Cause like, that's the first time I'm like waking up before the sunrise and like every single day, and on top of that, you know, like you're managing all of like classes and assignments too. So it was such a humbling experience because I'm like, wow, these athletes have been doing it for 4 years. That's insane, and like so much respect. But yeah, it was throughout that time it was fun and exciting because I'm building like a new routine in my life and like proving to myself like, wow, I can do it if I really like force myself to. But it was interesting that it kind of also like started like devolving into like I would now basing my life on like the amount of sleep that I got, because I was like, obviously you want like a lot of sleep to be able to manage your time, because if you're only running on like 5 hours of sleep, like you're not gonna feel great. And so now I was associating like time management with like sleep, and like everything that how I went about my day was I did it to ensure that I got enough sleep before practice the next day. And so essentially like if I didn't get enough sleep before practice, I would already wake up like feeling defeated, because I was like, oh, I already lost because I didn't get enough sleep. And I don't know, like logically that makes sense now. Talking about it now, it doesn't really make sense. But yeah, everything kind of like sucked. Like every day sucked because all day I'm just thinking about like I want to sleep by like I need to be in bed by like 9. I need to fall asleep by 10 so that I can get 8 hours of sleep. And I was just like routinely like making sure all these tasks were happening so that I can go to sleep at a certain time and wake up. But obviously life doesn't always go the way you want, and I think the goal is not necessarily to ensure that things go perfectly the way you want, but the goal is to be happy and like win in every small moment, right? So I remember realizing like, wow, I'm not basing my life on like my practice. I'm not basing my life on like the mystic law. I'm basing my life off of sleep. Like everything that I'm doing is to ensure I get enough sleep. I need to expand my perspective on my life to be able to not continuously suffer like this when I'm not getting enough sleep. But yeah, I decided to like make a goal. I was like, oh, my goal is to actually chant, and like one in the morning and like one at night. And I think when I made that like the center of my life, like I remember deciding like, wow, even if I don't get enough sleep, I'm not going to limit myself. I'm going to like have so much fun that day, and I'm going to have a great day, and I'm going to have a great practice, even if I don't get enough sleep. Like that's the power of like that infinite potential that we have.
Yeah.
And like changing that like mindset, and then like really elevating my life condition to like really believe in that, made the experience so much better. Like after those few weeks of practice after that, it was just like so much fun. And because I'm already having so much fun, like I appreciate like my practices more. I appreciate my final semester in college more. So yeah, it's great.
It's so funny because yeah, I've had periods of my life like that actually definitely in college too, like, oh well, I didn't get enough sleep and I'm so exhausted. And like, to be clear, we should all like take care of our health and get enough sleep. We're not saying that, but like the state of our life and the way our day goes doesn't solely depend on how much we sleep, right? Like sleep, yes, absolutely is a factor, but really like, I don't know about you, like some days I will sleep in and I'll get like 10 hours of sleep, but then I feel like garbage because I'm like, ugh, like I didn't need to sleep that much, and like, you know, I'm not really prioritizing the things in my life that like are important to me. And you know, like you can get plenty of sleep and still feel bad. You could get 6 hours of sleep and be like, you know what, actually I think that was enough for today. My life, I might be a little sleepy, but like the state of my life is not sleepy, so to speak, you know?
Yes.
So in that, like those last, you know, several weeks of cross country and like in your final semester, how were you feeling like about your life, about time management, about finishing college? Like where were you at?
There was so much that actually happened. There was like a really pivotal time that like solidified everything in like my senior year in my like spring semester. But I remember like, honestly, like I'm still in disbelief that I graduated, and like the entire senior year I'm just like, it was always like I can't believe we're seniors, I can't believe we're graduating, I can't believe we're graduating 2 weeks, I can't believe today's graduation, I can't believe we graduate. It's constant like state of disbelief, still processing all of it. But even more so during like while I'm like taking on my classes, like I remember like feeling really busy with all of my classes too, and like just like, I don't know, I was always like, oh, I'm too busy to even process anything. Like that's kind of like how I felt. And I was like, oh, because I'm like so busy with like processing everything, I was like, I don't really like feel anything. Like I don't feel like, I'm not like, oh my God, like this is my last days of college, like, you know, being on like feeling appreciative either. So it's kind of like, why don't I feel like appreciative, or like why don't I feel like I want to hang out with my friends? It was really interesting. I kind of felt very like indifferent and like neutral about everything. And I was kind of like waiting for something to give. I'm like, something needs to give, but I don't know where it's coming from. During that time too, like I'm just kind of like, everything is kind of like doing everything passively. Like all the like things that I'm doing, I'm just like doing very like passively and just kind of like getting by. And I remember around that time, like I'm also trying to like figure out like what it is that I want to like do with my life, right? And honestly, that vision is still very unclear, but it was kind of like I was just waiting for like an aha moment for that too. And like, and then even with like my relationship, because I've been in a long-term relationship for like, I think now it's like 2.5 years, but I remember at that time I was like, oh, my relationship is like, it's chill, it's like kind of plateaued, so don't really know where it's gonna go. And usually when I don't really feel in control of my life, like I'm always like, I want to like just a quick fix, like let me just change something. And I'm so sorry to my partner, because usually my partner is the target for all of those feelings, where I'm like, if I can't control and decide one thing, then the quickest thing that I can control is my relationship status. So there's so many times where I'm just like really going through it, and I'm like, well, I really need to change something. Maybe I just need to end my relationship. So my relationship would always be the target. So even during that time where I'm like feeling lost, like everything that's happening, I was like, well, maybe we need to break up. But I remember having like obviously I don't want to feel like that, and all of these like confusing feelings. I know that like all the confusion that I'm feeling, like the best thing to do is always to chant about it and bring it out, and then slowly process this. I have faith that like every time I do that, I'm making a cause to like for like my victory. So obviously I'm still doing that in that moment, but I think that when I really saw it like manifest was like we had like a dialogue actually, and he really opened up about like what he thought about the relationship and like what I thought about, and then what I thought about the relationship. But then what I realized was that when he was talking about like our relationship, like he had so much appreciation for it and like so much love. And then I realized like, how did I get to a point where I didn't see any of that? Like I realized like I wasn't the one like seeing like how much value my relationship brought me. And it was such a I realized I was very conscious of like everything that I was doing after this, when I was doing everything passively, right? Because I'm like just so in my own world. And then that was after that, like, that's, I think I mentioned it earlier. I was talking with like a friend in the Buddhist community, and then she was like, maybe like when things you're feeling bored or like feeling passive, like especially if you're feeling bored about something, like all the things that you're doing, whether it's your work or your relationship, maybe it's not the work or relationship that's gotten boring. Maybe it's you. And I'm like, you're so right. I was like, I'm the boring one. I'm the one that's become boring and like passively acting like this in my relationship, passively thinking about like all of my different responsibilities in this way. So I realized that I was boring and I wasn't taking responsibility for like things deeply. So that was kind of like my shift. And it was just, you become a lot more self-aware when you practice Buddhism.
So true. Sometimes you want to hear it, sometimes you don't. But even like when I don't want to hear it, if I chant about it, then I'm like, okay, I see the point. So getting to this point then at your senior year where like, I feel like you had a lot of realizations about yourself in terms of like self-esteem and the spirit to challenge yourself. I'm wondering, like, when you look back through those 4 years, what do you feel like was the biggest factor in you becoming someone now that, like, even if you have a busy schedule, you know, you're not going to just totally crumble, or if you feel super passive, you're not going to let that continue on for too long?
The biggest factor with how that changed, I think, just to always seek about something. I know I mentioned, like, I always, like, heard, like, encouragement from, like, friends in my Buddhist community, but also just, like, always reading, like, Mystery Kidda's guidance, seeking from, like, my mentor who's, like, lived all their life based on this practice. I think really, especially in my second year, that's when I really started studying Buddhism and trying to understand the depth of Buddhism and how it applies to like my life. That like seeking spirit to want to study or to like hear about other people's life experience and how they've overcome is like I think one of the biggest reasons why I was able to like navigate so many different like challenges throughout college. But I think once you cut off that like that spirit to seek or want to learn from others, like you're basically telling yourself that you can't learn anymore and that nobody else has something to offer you, and that's something that's very ego driven, and I have to make sure I keep that in check. And so that spirit to want to like learn from someone and learn from my mentor is what's helped guide me through everything.
Oh, that's incredible. It's so true, right? As soon as that kind of I guess like openness to like really being able to like understand and shifting your perspective, really seeking like, what does this mean for my life? Like, what am I not seeing about myself? when you cut that off, I think like effectively you're just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna stay in this spot of my life, and I'm gonna stay as this person with this set of, you know, tendencies, and that's that, you know. So I really love that. That's like such an incredible incredible point, and I think very useful for all of us to remember that. So I think, to finish up, I always ask, of course, a piece of advice. So I'm wondering what advice you would give someone who feels very overwhelmed and like burnt out by everything that's on their plate. What would you tell them so that they could somehow break through that?
Wow. Oh, that's a hard one.
It's hard when there's no context to a specific person. But just, you know, based on your own experience, you know, what advice, like, based on what you've really learned about, like, being able to manage time and, struggling with feeling overwhelmed?
I would say one, like, everything that you need, you already have. I know that sounds really cheesy, but because you can be like the most like technically skilled, you can have like all the best resources, and yet things can go completely like wrong. And so the thing that you really only have at the end of the day is like your determination and your conviction, and that comes from your own life. And you can tap into that when you really honestly and sincerely chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and basically affirm that and basically allow yourself to tap into that and bring it out. And that changes everything. Like, you're more efficient with your time. You feel purpose in the things that you're doing, and you're going to navigate it in like a way that you didn't even know was possible, because we're so limitless, because we're so like infinitely capable of so many things. Like, I love that in Buddhism, there's like that concept of like 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, right? And so as you were saying, like every moment it can be a pivotal moment, even the small moments for our own growth or for our own human revolution. When we chant, we really see the depth of every moment, and like how every moment is an opportunity for us to decide whether we're going to be victorious or whether we're going to feel defeated. And so yes, you're infinitely capable. You're just amazing, like as you are. Don't be so hard on yourself.